eating our lunch very quickly. And so just so glad that you could join us and welcome back. So I'm going to let Dr. Thompson and Lieutenant Governor Coleman kick us off. The commissioner will be here today. He's just running a little behind from a meeting he was at earlier. And we're just so grateful for everyone who could be here and our guests. So Dr. Thompson, I think you kick us off today, and then you'll turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It is good to see everybody. People ask me and say, what does it, feel like starting a new school year? I don't feel like I've ended the last school year. So it's a continuum. How about that? And that's important. That's what we're here to talk about today. It's for sure clear on my part that this Continuum is playing a big part in Kentucky and what we're doing and how we're doing it. But also, we've just become a national model. I've been all over the place this summer, and they hear about what we're doing and with the people that we've got engaged in doing this. And I want to thank you once again and appreciate you for doing it. We're still shooting toward this 60 by 30 goal. Proud to say that our numbers are looking pretty good. Kentucky, once again, we are leading the nation in improvement in completion rates, retention rates, persistence rates, and we are now above the nation's average. In 1997, when they set the goal for post-secondary education process, to get to the nation's average by 2020, well, we didn't get there, but now we're batting above the nation's average. And so we're proud of that. Today, we'll talk a lot about this advancing educational attainment goal we have, but how we need to partner with workforce to make that happen. I think we've done, once again, a job in Kentucky that other people are trying to replicate nationally and really pushing this forward with our P12 counterparts as well as higher ed into the workforce and bringing workforce in on the front end to help us to really define and decide how we go in the future. Our economy is doing well, even with a variety of things happening in laws and a variety of other places. Our economy is doing well, and higher education in K-12 as well as pre-K has to be an essential part of that, and we're here to talk about that. And so they gave me stuff to read. I better read it, or Amanda's going to kick me this time. So we play a vital role with educators, employers, and policymakers to align these efforts. Well, Amanda, I think I've even said all this without even looking at your notes. That's pretty good. Uh, we have to, though, in my mind, think about increasing these conversations even at a more rapid pace. When we think about truly, and we don't know what's going to happen down the road, but when we think about getting all of our citizens to where they need to go, I think we're going to have to think heavier about the gaps once again. And this group was put together to focus on those transitions and those gaps. But I think it's even more important that we do that. And that's all the way from looking at what we need to do, the gaps between pre-K and K-3 or between high school and college. These blending efforts have been very good, but we're going to have to think about how we blend even better, how we do more work-based scholarships, how we do more apprenticeships, even in teaching, how we do more of making sure that our very low income with what could be happening with Pell is very much a part of our conversation, even with the short-term Pell or the workforce Pell, how we become a quality what I call a quality check here in the state to make sure that it's working in the direction that it needs to work in. We need to think more about credit for prior learning. We need to think more truly about what competency-based education looks like. So all of these are coming to our attention, and in my way of thinking about it, the continuum is a great place to land some of these conversations. We can't do everything. I know that, Amanda, and I'm surely not trying to put it on our agenda. But I am saying, though, that it is important when we think about how we really directly connect education to the outputs that the state needs. And by the way, if you look at any sort of research data, look at any statistical data, it's the most direct correlation. So Once again, I thank you for being here. I could give you a bigger speech, but I would be kicked, and I won't do that. With that in mind, I want to turn it over to our partner and our Lieutenant Governor to kind of take us from here.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I'm in my new digs now, so I'm trying to make sure everything's set up because we're all out of the Capitol now. So this
Oh,
is my
that's right. You
first.
are out of the Capitol. Yeah.
We're out. They kicked us out. So I'm trying to get everything set up. This is my first video meeting since that happened. So you guys are like my guinea pigs here. But we've been working really hard. We've got a lot of partners. I know we're all here together to remove barriers to make the transition for students smoother. But I know I see a couple of people in here I want to give some shout outs to because they're doing amazing things within the administration. So Lynn Baker at the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, we have kicked off our pre-K for all tour around the state. We're really making a big push to make sure that this is something that's available for every Kentuckian, regardless of zip code. And so I know that the Early Childhood Office is working hard on that. And to JC Gregory over in Adult Education, one of my favorite things to share is one of the first things that Governor Beshear and I did when we were elected was to waive the GED fee, the number one barrier for people who deserve a second chance. And at this point, we have over 25,000 Kentuckians who have taken advantage of that opportunity. And so that goes to show when you remove barriers, when you help people to be able to get from where they are to where they want to be a little bit smoother, which is all the goal of this continuum, then great things happen. So I'm thankful for your all's partnership. I'm thankful for what you do in your regular job and then what you bring from your regular job to this continuum, because without everybody at the table, I think we all know that we wouldn't be where we are. And Dr. Thompson, I want to share those statistics about the college going rates. I'm gonna have to get that from Amanda, but thank you guys for being here, and I'll kick it right back over to Amanda and let her get us started.
Thank you both, President Thompson, Lieutenant Governor Coleman. I always like to start off with strong starts, and I appreciate you both sharing. And I think this is the beauty of this group. And actually, I was just sharing earlier that I met with Representative Lewis today to invite him to be a part of this, since he is the chair of the Education Committee focused on pre-K 12. And I just said, people come because it's the right thing to do, and we're moving forward because we're working together. And it's true. So Robin, if you'll go on and share the slides. We do have, first of all, Macy, I apologize. I said Maddie. I meant to say Macy. Good morning. So glad you could join us and not be in class at the moment. So thank you. We do have two more people that are going to join us. We're supposed to today, but things happen. We have Millie, and she is actually from Veterans Affairs and will be joining us through a military lens. And provides a lot of support, wraparound support for our military men and women. And then we will have a high school student who actually attends the iLead Academy. His name is Merritt Hall, and Merritt will hopefully join us soon. I know I got permission to miss his class to join us today for a little bit. It's super important to have student voice and to have perspective here. And we also have a guest today. Sherilyn Brecher has a intern for her mental health intern. And so you'll see Faith Nelson on here. So if you didn't recognize her, she's just joining today to shadow and listen to this conversation. And so wanted you to know that we welcome new members and we'll continue to do so. So today I really need you to frame in on the our role and our mission as the continuum. Exactly what the Lieutenant Governor said and President Thompson is that we really do exist to remove barriers. So students can access a seamless P20 education journey, and that goes all the way into adult learners as well. And so we support actions that lead to Kentuckians earning the necessary degrees and credentials to succeed in the workforce, elevate our communities, and increase economic opportunity. And what I love about this mission that you all co-wrote are the four pieces that we do, because we don't duplicate work or take over somebody else's work, and we don't tell people what to do. Instead of, we come together to really have four main roles. And it's convening cross-sector partners, which we love to do clearly with this group. Monitor and report progress. We like to share data with you. We like to make you informed of what's out there, what's not out there. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Identifying and advocating for policy solutions and accelerating action. And really, since 2021, this has been very much driven by our members of where we go and what we focus on. And so today, Robin, if you can go on to the next slide, please. Our objectives today is to assess our current work group structures for career exploration and K-12 post-secondary alignment. We can give you some updates on some of the work that's been going on that you all expressed interest in and focus on earlier this year. So we'll give you updates and an opportunity to really push in on where you'd like to see more of that or a different direction. Are we aligned to what you had envisioned? We're going to explore current education workforce partnerships and data insights. I will show you that as a nudge of what we did last time. And then you're going to have an opportunity to provide feedback on next steps for advancing work in education workforce partnerships, career exploration, and the post-secondary K-12 alignment. So you'll see that we're going to jump in here after I stop talking and give you a little overview of what we did in April of our current work. You're going to get an overview of that and updates. I think you will be pleased, but we'll give you an opportunity to talk about that and give us an update. And then we also have a review of some current education workforce partnerships in the landscape. And what I mean by that is when we were talking in April, you were very interested after the panel. If you remember, we had a panel, and I'll talk about this in a moment, from different perspectives. And what really stood out to you all were those education workforce partnerships. And what does that mean? What does that look like? And that is post-secondary as well as K-12, as well as really pre-K, into the world of how those workforce partnerships work. And so you had really elevated that as we need to know more. What does that mean? So Robin and I took your feedback and we said, we're really going back to the mission of the Continuum. We wouldn't dive in and set up partnerships because there are people and agencies who do that. But we do have structures in the state that already exist. And so we are not out for duplicating work, but we're up for elevating or engaging in the work that exists. So we are really happy to have Alisher kind of give an overview today. And we are welcome Lakeisha Miller from the Kentucky Chamber Foundation and Johnny Collette from UK, but they also serve on KWIB and lead work groups. And so we're going to hear about what already kind of exists or what does exist in the realm of what we are interested in. And then at the end, we're going to clarify some roles and actions that you would like to see us push in on. And that will set up our agenda for November. And so in April, we dug into that panel and really started talking about the importance of that tight, strong pipeline from education into the workforce. So we do have a well-educated workforce that can provide a better quality of life. Everybody on this call is absolutely a part of that and must be. So Robin, if you'll just show the April slide, and then we will turn it over to our updates. But just reflecting on the conversation very briefly, is that we introduced Kentucky's updated top 5 high demand work sectors. And if you remember, Alisher gave a good overview of that, how that was determined, what that means, that how many jobs, there are multiple careers in those sectors. And I think when you hear from Jessica on futurity, we align with that very well at all education levels with Kentucky wage data to show that. We also had the panel discussion of the workforce implications. What does this mean for education? What does this mean for families? What does this mean for students, our workforce? And then review of current data trends within the high demand sectors. And if you remember, Sam Keithley from KY Stats gave an overview of those sectors where we have the need and how intentional Kentucky really can be and is with the data that we have. And so at the end, I know it's kind of hard to see this word cloud, but at the very end, we ask you what stood out to you. And this, what's not hard to read is partnerships, alignment, futurity, and collaboration. And so we really took your notes. And a lot of these other smaller words are not insignificant. They absolutely pour into those same common themes. A lot of it was on career exploration, opportunity and access to even dig into what's out there. Because if we all share it in this group and we don't share it within our network, then how do people know? and how do we really provide opportunities and true access. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Fletcher. She's going to share first. Jessica is a main lead on our Futurity website, and she will give you an overview and update of what we have done and who we've talked to since April based on your feedback. And then right after Jessica, we're going to have Melissa Bell, who's our Vice President of Student Access, to share an update on the competencies to kind of let you know how that's going, what does this look like? And this is specifically in relation to career exploration and our K-12 post-secondary alignment work. Two facets of it, certainly not all of it. So we will do more discussion afterwards, but Jessica, I'm going to turn it to you first. You're muted. We still can't hear you, Jess. Nope. Do you want me to start with Melissa, maybe? Now I can. Oh, nope, it just cut back out. Okay, we'll go into Melissa because it's kind of muted, like when you do speak. So you may want to log off and log back in. Melissa, we're going to turn it to you and pivot.
Absolutely. And Robin, are you doing the slides? Awesome. I appreciate it. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you this update today and any opportunity to talk about the Kentucky graduate profile, as Dr. Thompson will tell you. I like talking about it, but before I give you an update, let me give you kind of a reminder or refresher about what it is. So the Kentucky graduate profile is the post-secondary learning framework in Kentucky. So these are the 10 essential skills that graduates need, and you see them on your screen there. And these are skills that it does not matter what major, it does not matter what you plan to do after you graduate. These are the skills that are important for lifelong success. And so I don't think anything on that screen is going to surprise you. You know, leadership, communication, civic engagement, things like that. You can go to the next slide, Robin, please. And as a directive or a request of the CEC, CPE and KDE staff work together to create a crosswalk between the K-12 portrait of a learner and the post-secondary Kentucky graduate profile. And that's what you see on your screen right here. This is a visual comparison and alignment of the K-12 and post-secondary learning frameworks. And as you can see, there's a lot of alignment. Sometimes it's a one-to-one alignment. Sometimes it's a one-to-many. But the important part of this is that we had no issue. There was no skill or nothing in the portrait of the learner that was just out there as an outliner. And we said, oh, this just doesn't fit anywhere. So the main point is there is an alignment, and hopefully, you know, as we go forward and talk about learning, we're going to see this seamless pattern and building of skills along the way. Next slide. You're good, Robin. So we're in the process of trying to make this ubiquitous, basically. So full-scale implementation. But how we got here is that we spent a few years working with campus teams basically to lay the groundwork for all of this. And then last summer, we came up with statewide definitions for each of the skills, and we identified 3 levels of mastery for each of the 10 essential skills. And now we've asked each of our institutions to give us campus implementation plans on how to make the graduate profile part of the institutional fabric. And those reports are actually due in a few days, and I'm really looking forward to reading it to see both the unique aspects, but also the common patterns across our campuses of how that this is going to be integrated both into the curricular and co-curricular aspects of each campus. Next. So just to give you a little bit more in depth about our phase 2 work, last summer actually, we worked with the Competency-Based Education Network, CBEN for short, to help us define each of these skills so that we're all speaking the same language, and to identify 3 levels of mastery. So we created teams for each of the 10 essential skills. Each team had faculty, staff, and employers at the table, and KDE staff was part of the discussions as well. And those teams hammered out the definitions, and then we took those definitions and built out 3 levels of mastery. We had a public review period where other faculty, staff, and very importantly, employers, and we actually had, if memory serves me, about 100 employers who actually commented on this. We took all the feedback and we incorporated that into the final product. So for each skill, once again, there's a definition, and then the 3 levels of mastery, the first one being the I think that's actually supposed to be, well, no, benchmark. So the benchmark is what's expected of someone just coming into post-secondary. So students are beginning to show these skills, but they may need some help. The milestone level is after 2 years of college, completion of associate degree, or 2 years at a university. And at this point, students should be able to demonstrate these skills without much help. And then at the capstone level, that's when you're getting your bachelor's degree, you've mastered the skill, you can demonstrate it with expertise and precision. So you can see that there's a progression of learning and skills development. And to me, this progression is really a wonderful way to show the value add of post-secondary education. Next slide. And I just wanted to give you one example here. And that's our essential skill 7, engage in civic life. And so our definition actually for civic engagement is that graduates will engage in political, social, and other activities to address issues that benefit society. So this slide here shows the performance indicators for the benchmark level, once again, high school completion or just coming into post-secondary. And at this level, students are expected to respectfully discuss basic ideas related to public policy and the social good. They should be able to express their own opinions, but also very importantly, to acknowledge the opinions of other people. They should be able to articulate knowledge of democratic principles, the U.S. Constitution, and the impact of individual and community involvement in American government, both historical and current. So this is kind of demonstrating civic literacy. And then they should be able to describe opportunities for themselves or groups of people to engage in civic life to bring about positive change. And so you can also see that even though this is a clearly defined essential skills 7, there are lots of skills built into this. You can see communication, you can see interpersonal relations, you can see critical and creative thinking, you can see leadership. And so this is the benchmark level. Milestone builds on that, capstone builds even further. Yes, thank you, Robin. So what we're doing right now is really focusing on helping faculty and staff at institutions incorporate skills into the curriculum and co-curriculum. So we are building an online resource center, and that's the screenshot that you see in front of you. This resource is by no means complete, but the screenshot will give you an idea of what we're doing. So we have some basic information about the graduate profile, its history, why are we doing this, all the definitions I just talked about, all the levels of mastery that I just talked about. And then for each skill, we're identifying resources related to the knowledge, skills, and application for each of those 10 essential skills. And very importantly, each section has resources related to assessment so that we're not just talking about it, we're talking about ways to demonstrate. And then I also wanted to point out that even though we're really focused on the faculty and staff resources right now, one of my major goals this year is to really further expand upon our employer partnerships. I already talked about how we incorporated employers into our work beforehand, but I also work very closely with Leslie Sizemore, who heads up our workforce efforts here at CPE. But I would love to expand our employer base, get more involved, and help do this continuous improvement and have this constant feedback loop as we move from basically the preschool onto the workforce. So, and Robin's already ahead of me up there.
Thank you, Melissa. Just one question that did get brought up. Dr. Gregory and Dr. Thompson answered about it. I just want to make sure the whole group sees it. It says, is the educational level high school completion inclusive of individuals completing the secondary process, HSE or GED, or is it exclusive to high school diploma awardees?
And so
The answer, it is, go ahead, Melissa.
Well, I was going to say that, and we don't actually even say high school completion. We just say new to post-secondary. So,
right.
Yeah,
it is included, obviously. And the point I want to make here is, and I want everybody to understand, before we developed this, many of you may remember we employed a group, QA Commons, a long time ago when I came into this role, to really work with employers on the front end. I mean, this is every employer you can name, to really talk about what are we missing in post-secondary to get you all what you need. So these 10 essential skills, if you want to call them that, we call them employability skills, were defined by employers. I talked to hundreds of employers. So these, and still do. So we are incorporating this in all of our programs, starting out with general education. So we want every student to graduate. Now we hope to build on this, just to be clear. We hope one of these days all of our courses have capstones. We hope to have, probably I won't be in a position by the time this happens, but 100% of our students with a work-based learning experience of some sort, or a research experience, or something along those lines. What we know is that this impact is going to be, yes, on our economy, on our workforce, that's positive, but it's also going to make a more well-rounded student. And with those, as Representative Tipton will say, those lifelong learning skills. So the point, this is, by the way, no other place in the United States doing this, and everybody's getting us to speak around the country on how we did this and how we got to that point. But all of our institutions, all 16 community colleges and all four-year institutions are, and our privates are coming in on this too. So just to let you know, this is going to scale. This is not just doing it around the edges. We're taking this to a massive scale. So it's not just about those technical pieces of knowledge that employers told us we did very well on, but it's also those employability skills that they can take with them throughout life.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Thompson. And we're going to continue on with this as well, because I do know, I want to note too, Lynn, that I think we've even talked about early childhoods, their essential skills, those social and emotional learning skills really are very similar on the self-help, self-advocacy skills, align very early on with what the learner, the profile of a learner actually does at K-12. And so how that really feeds in, it would be amazing to have your roles piece aligned as well and really see the development of those dispositions and skills even early on, just of how we interact as individuals. So that has not gone forgotten, I will just tell you, but emphasize. But Melissa, thank you so much for sharing that. Don't go, because we have some question time here in a minute, but I'm going to go on and turn over to Jessica and let you give us a futurity update.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, sorry about that. I am actually in Eastern Kentucky today, or Corbin, which I think is more like South Central. And what I'm doing down here is sharing out about futurity to the Shaping Our Appalachian Region, or SOAR conference. And it has been a really great experience and really great exposure for this brand new platform for both college students, people at KCTCS schools, and all kinds of workforce development and healthcare people down here in Corbin with me. So great to kind of network and get the word out about Futurity, which is what I spend most of my time doing these days. Since we met in April, Futurity has just kind of exploded. We have, especially when school started just a couple of weeks ago, we saw a peak of usage. I think we got about 1,200 views in one day. And this week we've had about 400 views. So, I mean, we are really reaching K-12 audiences, we're reaching adult education audiences, and basically anybody who wants to kind of explore the education to career pipeline. But what I wanted to show you and update you on today is a new feature in Future Finder that we just added about a month ago, which highlights the CTE program area that is for each of the 700 occupations that are in Future Finder. So if you see on the screen under, I just selected at random this occupation for medical and health service managers, you'll see the programs area for CTE courses in high school is health science. From there, you can go into the CTE area and read a little bit more about health science, especially if you are a middle school student or an early high school student trying to figure out what that career pathway is. The other thing we did was add a section there at the bottom of the screen for military aligned careers that tells people who have served in the military and are looking for a civilian job as they are entering back into civilian life, what how the careers that they had when they were in the military align with the careers that we have listed in the in Future Finder. So two really great new ways to kind of show the data, but in a very user-friendly way that is really aimed at helping everybody understand that college or the education to career pathway. So also, I wanted to add a little bit about apprenticeships. We do have the apprenticeships data from the Education and Labor Cabinet, and we are hoping to add that to Future Finder in the next couple of months. And we are still slowly but surely building out our scholarship database with the help of Kia. So those two new features we're hoping will be available as soon as humanly possible. But there is a lot of work to be done to both get the data included into Future Finder and designed how we want it to look. And then finally, we have been meeting regularly with a workforce work group to continue to talk about how the business community can engage with Futurity. And one of the things that they really wanted to see was different ways for audiences to be able to engage. So probably next month, we will be showing, or we will have a new homepage for Futurity that will look a lot different than the three kind of main areas of the website that you see on the homepage now. And this will be more targeted to individual audiences such as adult learners, high school students, middle school students. So people can go to the homepage, identify as whatever audience they are, and then immediately find information on Futurity that directly applies to them. So really excited to get those developments off the ground. And if anyone has any questions about Futurity, please always reach out to me and help us make this bigger and better. We know we are on the forefront of what any state is doing in this area, and we want to keep it that way. So we're continuing development and improvements as we go.
Awesome, Jess. Any immediate questions for Jessica? Awesome. I'm very encouraged just by even what we've heard today. The other things we have not even talked about that continue to go very well, and the really the impact of this network. We still have the Kentucky Advising Academy. We have a based on the conversation from April, really drove our focus for our Kentucky Advising Academy webinars that are really focused on workforce alignment, advising, career exploration, partnerships with 2- and 4-year institutions along with employers, which is really encouraging. We have great resources and we'll share those with you. Same goes with dual credit and really looking at optimizing dual credit to really align with those career aspirations and partnerships and intentionality. And we will share those with you. And I was really hoping Jim Flynn would be on today. He very rarely misses. So I know that he is probably very busy, but he reached out and their superintendent, this semester's meeting or their fall convening in September is focused on the top 5 high demand job sectors and what the superintendents are doing to embrace a broader view of future planning for their students and how to really build out that ecosystem of support. And so I'm really encouraged, and he is inviting higher education and workforce to the table in front of all of the superintendents. And I think probably Representative Tipton will be there or on the stage. I'm not for sure, but there's definite engagement with superintendents and Dr. Flynn being quite the voice of those educational leaders and carrying that same message, I think is super exciting and really promising as we continue to go. So we're going to stop for a minute. Is there any conversation before, anything that sticks out to you or things that you feel like weren't mentioned or you have questions about before we do a quick poll of just getting it? Yes. Oh, thank you, Representative Tipton. We did present on futurity at the Interim Joint Committee for Education this past summer. And actually, we've gotten a lot of feedback. I'm so glad you heard good feedback behind the scenes. That makes me happy. We got really good conversation, engagement, and that doesn't always happen when our representatives and senators are super busy and trying to figure out what's important. We also presented to the BR subcommittee for post-secondary education and had a lot of conversations after that meeting as well, and offers to call their local jailers to engage in futurity, to call their local education organizations to help their adults in their community. It was very encouraging. I think Jessica and I were there for an hour plus afterwards, which we were more than happy to do. And so really thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Anything else that comes to mind?
Amanda,
Yes.
hi. I don't know. I hope you can hear me. As you know, I'm traveling, but I just
Yes.
want to thank you all, and especially Jessica and you and CPE. As you know, there was a steep learning curve on futurity, and I know that I learned it's not as easy to produce an as you would think, and so I am so excited to hear all of the new pieces that are coming along with it, and the fact that it's actually getting marketed and communicated throughout the state. This is a huge asset for people to use, for students, for adults, and I'm just very thankful that we've had a collaborative effort to pull this off. And again, special thanks to you and Jessica and CPE.
Thank you, Beth, so much. I appreciate that. And it came from this group. The need arose from this team. And so I appreciate your partnership. And the other thing I will mention briefly that Beth can share a little bit later is that she is leading, and I'm right there helping her along or being supportive of a middle school career exploration grant that is really hosted through ESG and another organization. And it's a planning grant to really elevate career exploration in middle school. And really what we found is there's a lot of components that Kentucky already has in place. We have policy, we have standards, we actually have a person who focuses on middle school exploration, career exploration. And so we're looking to elevate that and do even more. And I appreciate Beth's leadership in that. And we have representatives from different schools, and it's encouraging. And I think we can do great things. So Robin, I'm going to have you put the poll out. You're going to see a Zoom poll, and it should show you where you can type directly, or if it doesn't, it'll ask you to, or it'll offer you a QR code, but give you a minute to answer the questions, please.
Hey Amanda, while we're completing a poll, can I make a quick comment on a graduate profile?
Oh, please.
So before I introduce myself as part of the K-Web, I do want to note to you all, I have an adjunct role with Kentucky State University in the once a week in the evenings, and the graduate profile was actually given to us to incorporate into the syllabus. So it's good to see those two connect. And I know President Thompson, you used to be president at KSU, so KSU is definitely taking the steps towards making sure students graduate with those skills.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Hey, Amanda.
Yes, Kathleen, please.
Oh, it's Penny.
Oh, Penny. Yeah, I see.
I don't know why this was it. Yeah, it's me. Oh no, it's just me.
Formal, Penny. It's so formal. Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta take that off there. What's that up there? I'm thinking about the new assessment and accountability that's going to be coming,
Yes.
and I'm thinking about local accountability and how much that's going to weigh.
Yes.
How much? And I know conversations have been had. I know that there's some overlapping here, but
Sure.
in terms of access, in terms of opportunities, and in terms of holding to that local accountability, yet understanding that still at the KDE level, there still have to be some things that are non-negotiable. How are
Right.
you navigating that, and what's that going to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll be honest, Penny, I'll be anxious to see how that works too. Because I think the work around the local measure is well respected and appreciated across the state. I will be very anxious, and maybe Representative Tipton has an opinion from the General Assembly, but even from the federal government, I'll be anxious to see how that's embraced in the assessment and accountability model, because I think there is effort to have an authentic assessment and a relevant assessment of what's going on. So I'm not sure, to be completely honest. And I know the commissioner's supposed to come in as soon as he has a signal from Paducah, but I think it's a really good question, especially for alignment purposes. So I don't know if
Yes. Yeah, that part. Yeah.
yes, that's what I wonder about. Aaron, did you have something?
Yeah, Penny, not necessarily on that. I think I understand your question. And for us in post-secondary, even though we do believe our institutions have their own mission and looking toward where they need to look toward, especially when you think about 16 community colleges and where they serve, what constituency they serve. And even when you think about big research institutions like UK and U of L versus smaller comprehensives like KSU and Moorhead, we feel, though, that we wanted to make a statement that every college student that graduates in Kentucky would have these 10 essential skills incorporated into theirs. So even though KD and the K-12 districts may not align exactly with that uniformity that we're trying to do, we do believe that if they incorporate whatever they incorporated at the local level, that's going to, we'll crosswalk that into post-secondary, right? It may not be all, we're
Yeah.
asking them to do all of them in post-secondary, right? And there's some of our programs going to do it more than I mean, they're going to do one or two things more than our other programs. And you would even argue, how does civic education, civic literacy become a part of that? We determined that that was an essential skill in that regard. And we feel like by the time a student gets out of post-secondary, whether they receive that in K-12 or not, that we feel like that we had to say that the students are coming out of college will have received that somewhere. So we don't know how it's going to end up being a part of the accountability system for K-12, what P-12, but we know that we're going to be able to crosswalk, we think, all of those, no matter what district they're from.
Yeah, and I would. Oh, I'm sorry, Penny. Please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we have the portrait of a learner, portrait of a graduate, whatever your district chooses to call it. I think that's a great place to begin, right? Because it's being a good citizen and all these other things that come into play with a portrait of a learner or a portrait of a graduate. So whatever it looks like, I just want to make sure that we're not checking boxes.
Yep.
And Dr. Thompson, we've talked a lot about this. I'm always about access.
Right.
If you don't make these opportunities available to every kid, regardless of what program they're in or what demographic, then you're gonna lose some kids, right? And we're not gonna get the results that we really, really desire.
I fully agree. That's why we thought ours is going to be actually incorporated in all of our programs and all of our curriculum. And our pedagogical, our faculty development will be around this as it's already started. And we have faculty, staff, and everybody else been involved with us from the beginning on this. So we feel, especially, Penny, I'll just point out, when we think about gaps, and I think that's where you're going, we have to make sure that every single student, no matter where they're from, are getting these skills. They're getting what they need because they need to be computer literate also, right? They need to have a numeracy and a set of literacy processes in place that they can build on once they get out of college even. So I hear you. And then that's why we wanted to make sure that that became really our accountability system, with the lack of a better phrase, that makes sure it was incorporated into the threads of the campus, the curriculum, and the pedagogy.
Dr. Ellis,
Yes.
if I could add a little bit to Penny's question, Commissioner Fletcher presented at the June interim education meeting, gave a presentation on this United We Learn proposal. Actually, I was not able to attend. I was in DC telling them what Kentucky's doing on math education at a meeting. But I've talked to a few people after that meeting. I think these, especially on local accountability, the biggest concern that I hear is how are we going to have an objective system of analysis across the state, with every district kind of identifying their own local accountability. And I think it's just a lot of, you got to understand, a lot of if you're not on the education committee or involved in this work, the education community sometimes speaks a foreign language to some of the legislators, if you understand what I mean, because a lot of the terms, a lot of the language is used are terms they're not familiar with. So it's going to take a lot of one-on-one conversation with each legislator in your community, explaining what this is, helping them to understand what the goals are and how this can be achieved.
Thank you, Representative. And I think it's definitely an ongoing conversation. And the other thing that continues to come up, I think the crosswalk is a great start. And I think embedding the pre-K skills as well, I think just makes it stronger. And, there are the essential skills that were put into law several years ago for K-12 that are embedded in the career standards. And so I definitely think there's a lot of viability there, but still to respect the unique aspect of the local measure should be interesting. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Penny. So Robin, do you want to share the results?
Sure. So can you all see results now? You can? Okay. So I just wanted to let you all take a look at what came in. We had quite a few responses to the poll, and this will give the co-leads and Amanda and me some really good ideas and direction for the meeting that we'll have in November. We want to make sure that we can make the most of our time together. But you can see a lot there in the word cloud about career schools and alignments, a lot of words that we've been talking about, ideas about futurity, ideas about progress or improvement, students, careers, data, futurity, just more and more going a little bit deeper in all of these different subjects. And then it seems like there's a lot of positive thoughts about the alignment to the work that we're doing with the continuum. And so, the topics of career exploration and K-12 and post-secondary alignments really came out of the conversations of the continuum early on. And so we want to continue that, but we want to make sure that we're staying on the right track and in the right lane as far as what the continuum's role and where we feel like we could have the most influence. So thank you all for participating in the poll, because it will really give us a lot of content and information as we think about making the most of November. So we're gonna move ahead now and kind of shift gears into, we've been thinking a little bit about some of the robust work that's already going on around career exploration and K-12 and post-secondary alignment. And now we're going to start talking a little bit more about educator and workforce partnerships and participation. That was really a theme from our meeting in April. And after that meeting, Amanda and I have done a lot of talking and thinking about, well, how do we figure out what's already going on? And so we went to one of our familiar partners, which is Alisher, the executive director of the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board, and said, can you help us figure this out? And so we really appreciate him introducing us to Lakeisha Miller and Johnny Collette, who's also a longtime friend, colleague, that who already have some work going on in the realm of educator and workforce partnerships. And so what we wanted to do was have Lakeisha and Johnny come today, and Alisher, to share a little bit about some of the current work. But we don't want you to think of this as an exhaustive kind of discussion, but just as a couple of examples of good work that's already happening in our state around education and workforce partnerships, so that the CEC can really think about, what do we do next, and how do we think about supporting or leveraging the work that's already going on to accomplish the goals that we have around educator workforce partnerships. So Alisher, I'm going to turn it over to you, I think, to give just a bit of an introduction to the conversation, and then we'll hear from Lakeisha and Johnny about their specific work.
Yes, and thank you, Robin. Thank you to the Commonwealth Education Continuum for allowing us to come and speak today. We'll ask for the slide to pop up whenever you can, but to kind of give you guys an introduction to Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board, we are situated within the Department of Workforce Development at the Education and Labor Cabinet, but the Workforce Board is made up of 51% business organizations. We are chaired by Lori Ulrich, representing Fleming Mason Energy, and our vice chair is Johnny Collette, and I'll introduce my colleagues here shortly. But with that 51% business representation, we also have 20% labor and workforce representation. We also have government representation with the governor, lieutenant governor, with the economic development, with us at Education and Labor Cabinet. And then we have the legislative branch with Senator Higdon, Representative McCool, our mayor, county judge executive, and also we have educators on the board from everything from K through 12, post-secondary, and adult education. So it's a very diverse group of individuals coming together on a quarterly basis to move Kentucky forward. One of the key things is to be an advisory board to the governor and the executive branch, but at the same time, be able to understand what are the signals from the business community that we need to follow. I'm a student of economics, and supply and demand is the way I live my life. I have a quote here from the Fed, and it's everything you need to learn, you will learn in economics. And that is purely, an economics comment. But when we look at the points of what is the demand for our labor and what is the supply, and how do we mash the two, right? Dr. Thompson, you mentioned earlier blending and blurring the lines. And so what I'll go over here to lay the foundation down is what we're trying to do. We're getting signals from the business community. We are getting signals from the supply side, the education continuum, and trying to see where those alignments are and what we can do as state government and all the stakeholders to move it forward. So what you see in front of you is an infographic for our upcoming strategic plan. The strategic plan has not been released, but the goals and priorities have been settled on. And these priorities and goals were not drawn in silo. They weren't done purely on the government side. These came to be when we brought together not only the workforce board that's representative of all those individuals I mentioned, but also another sister board called the Education and Workforce Collaborative. That is a 19-member, primarily executive branch members, plus other statewide organizations that do some kind of education and workforce development. And then third, we brought together the business chairs from the 10 local workforce development boards across Kentucky. We wanted to bring all those three parties together and say, what's important to you going forward? And so these goals overwhelmingly were the thorough line across it. We need employers engaged in the workforce system. They must signal those demands. We need education to be attained across the board, right? Whatever that is, short-term credentials, long-term credentials, everything in between. We need workers to participate. We want to make sure that the whole spectrum of individual Kentuckians have access to good quality jobs. And Dr. Gregory wasn't, up to speak for this panel, but he is our chair of workforce participation and driving that work forward. And then finally, organization and resource alignment. How are we looking at the return on investment? And it's more so, what is the value that the workforce development system brings to individuals, employers, and community? And so those primary goals have three priorities, with each of those priorities having metrics. We're not going to dive into the metrics, me personally, but I wanted you all to see the priorities and the importance that we heard from our stakeholders, and primarily 51% business organizations. And so I will turn over to our board members and the chairs of each of those committees, specifically employer engagement and education attainment. But I'll work in some color commentary along the way just to share some of the programs that are in place that we're doing, that employer and education spheres are connecting and blurring the lines. We want, at the end of the day, get people into good jobs. And we want companies to find qualified talent. And in a lot of ways, we have to blur the lines of what a student is to what a worker is, and to what a worker is to what a learner is. If we can blend the lines, we're doing a good job at it. So with that, I will turn over to Lakeisha Miller, who serves as the proxy chair for employer engagement, and I'll let her speak a little bit about the work she's doing with KWIB and beyond in kind of answering the questions that you all had. Lakeisha?
Thank you so much, Alishir, and thank you to this group for having me. As Alishir mentioned, that I am the proxy chair for the Employer Engagement Committee. So, I'd love to kind of talk to you all about what does that actually mean, and really talk about like some of those buckets. One of the buckets that you saw there was work-based learning, which also, my good colleague Johnny Collette, he's going to also talk about. But before we do that, I think it's important to understand what employers are looking for from a workforce ecosystem. So, from my perspective, working at the chamber, working out of our foundation side, when employers have a need, they could care less who gets credit, whether it's for skilled workers or expanding their talent pipelines or just removal for employment barriers. They don't want to have to knock on 10 different doors to get an answer or to be connected to a solution. And I think as a state, we are rich in resources, rich in programs that help employers do these things. One thing that we've learned is there's a deficiency in how that process is streamlined or coordinated. So maybe some of you have heard about the statewide statewide talent, team, SWAT, which is something that really is how do you develop a coordinated system across Kentucky where it's a single, clear, and coordinated response for employers. So developing that statewide workforce and talent team makes that possible, right? It takes the guesswork out of what does employers need, and so we can be responsive to triaging across different partners in a timely fashion. I always think that efficiency creates opportunity, and opportunity attracts talent. So when we think of all the different opportunities that our students need, that our workers need, but also how does it match to the demand of employers, the more that we can create more efficiency across that system, the better it is for the long term for our state. So really excited to cultivate what SWAT is. Again, most, if not all of that work is going to happen at a local and regional level. So SWAT really is intended to strike that balance between statewide standard of excellence and local flexibility that's needed to address the needs of businesses in their own communities. So we're really excited to see SWAT kind of take off. We've hosted an inaugural convening December 2024. It's hard to believe that was just last year. It feels like 2 years, 2 years ago. But it's really taking shape in terms of, how do we start working closer together? Sorry, guys, I'm getting over a cold. Working closer together to help employers reach the next step. So one of the areas with the KWIB, especially with the employer engagement piece, is work-based learning. And part of that, I think, is truly understanding what supportive services do employers need to be able to expand the pipeline for work-based learning opportunities. So one of the things that always sticks out to me just from a national perspective is, over 65% of students who have paid internship positions or some form of work-based learning positions, they do move on to have stronger career readiness. In a lot of cases, especially if it's internships or any type of apprenticeship model, they do receive full-time job offers. And when you compare that to 39% of students that don't have internship or really clearly aligned work-based learning opportunities, it's dramatic. And when we think of our state's workforce participation, how do we continue to grow that pipeline with employers? A lot of employers, they really want to grow their own workforce, which is fantastic. And I think work-based learning helps them to do that. So with the work along with the KWIB, it's how can we provide supports to employers to help them to understand how do you create that talent pipeline development, stronger candidate readiness that ultimately leads to an improved job placement and workforce participation for Kentucky. So what we've seen, or what we'll start diving into, is the more clarity we can give to employers around how do you engage. And maybe that is just case studies. We have so many examples of strong employers that have figured out how to do it. Even in some of those top sectors like healthcare, even manufacturing, you have a subset of employers that are saying, I can't bring anybody on that's younger than 16. But then you have a couple employers that's like, no, you can bring people on that's 16 years. They don't have to be 18. So again, how do we start pushing those examples to the forefront so employers can really start clarifying and understanding what it really takes? How do we start engaging employers more in mentorship opportunities for students that might not be at that internship level? What does that career exploration wheel and preparation wheel look like? So again, that they can contribute from an effective lens, but also making sure that we are tying it to definitions and outcome metrics that employers understand. So I think part of that and being able to work closely with the Education Attainment Committee is going to be good, because while we want to increase the supply, we want to make sure that it's streamlined and coordinated with the demand. So I'll pause here because I feel like I've talked a lot. Plus, I think my throat's going to die in a second. But Alishir, any additional points that you feel like I should add here?
I think that's great, Lakeisha. One of the key things, we have a good traction and understanding of registered apprenticeship. Registered apprenticeships provide a better entry level wage compared to other jobs. Data shows in Kentucky, a registered apprenticeship pays $18 entry level, while everyone else averages at $14 an hour. And so we are really doubling down on growing registered apprenticeships, but also understanding employers have different needs and they may not need the gold standard of a work-based learning model. They may want to do a FAME type of model that Toyota started, over a decade ago. They may want to do a CTE internship that could be, pre-apprenticeship, or it could be something else. So as Lakeisha was saying, it's really meeting the business where they are. And I will give an example. Novellus is a company in Guthrie, Kentucky, right there on the border of Tennessee. It's a metals company in West Kentucky, and their registered apprenticeship program was launched, and they're seeing not only the tangible benefits of people coming in, retention, all that, but the intangibles of leadership skills being built, their future company leaders are built through the registered apprenticeship program. I had the chance to go to SHRM yesterday, talk to some individuals, and companies are really honing in on succession planning in 5 to 7 years as the expertise of the boomer generation is leaving out the door. How do you pass that on to the next generation? So we think one of the answers is work-based learning. And with that, knowing that employers are saying we need this, and then educators are saying we need this, I want to turn it to Johnny Collette, our board vice chair, and also the committee chair for education attainment, and allow him to speak a little more about what he's doing.
Thank you, Alishir, and thank you, Lakeisha, for your thoughts on this as well. As the chair of the Education Attainment Committee, I'm excited about our focus on expanding access to work-based learning. And, we plan to do a number of things. As Alishir said, our strategic plan is not released yet, but it is, set. So we look forward to releasing that in the coming months and looking forward to many opportunities to partner together even more. So a number of things we plan to do in the Education Attainment Committee around work-based learning and again expanding access to those opportunities is to develop clear explanations of commonly used terms is one thing. And we know, that's not to replace how other people talk about it at all, but it is we've heard from business, right? How can we sort of all talk about this in a way that we all understand? So we'll be not doing any of this work in silos or in isolation, but with partners like you. And so developing those commonly used terms will be a big deal for us over the next several years. And then looking at assessing available funds. Dr. Thompson mentioned work-based scholarships earlier, and others have leaned into that. So we don't want to leave any opportunity on the table for students. And another thing will be to establish a network of work-based learning experts that support learners across the state. And specifically as we think about that with our CTE and across districts in the Commonwealth. So that'll be an interesting thing to do again together as partners as we think about really having opportunity for employers and others to know, okay, here's what we want to do this, but how do we do it? How do we do it well? And how do we partner well to really increase opportunities and advance these options for all of our students? Again, all of our students is what we've talked a lot about today. So some of those metrics, I'm not going to take a lot of time because I think I'll be a little less efficient if I'm not careful than my colleagues from the KWIB today. And Amanda, please shut me down. I need it sometimes. But a couple of metrics that I will point to within the first year, we're going to be gathering work-based learning outcomes data related to post-secondary attainment and employment. And specifically, there's something that means a lot to us and a lot to me as well personally, is that's going to include subpopulations. We want to make sure this notion of not leaving any student behind, that we really aren't, and that we're asking the right questions, right? We don't want to just ask the right first question. How many students are engaged in work-based learning? We need to be the ones in the room who ask the right second and third questions, right? So if that's the number involved in work-based learning, that's a percentage, then what percentage of those are students with disabilities? What percentage of those are English learners? So we care a lot about that, and we're going to focus a lot on that in this first year of really learning what's out there and learning what the realities are around the data. And again, in terms of being efficient with time, and having great models set for me by Alishir and Lakeisha. I don't want to be a bad non-example for this. So I want to transition into a couple of other things. Alishir asked me to talk about something that's been really my whole career, and that is people with disabilities as it relates to this notion of education, because this is the Commonwealth education continuum, and as it relates to employment, because that's a lot of what we're talking about today. But from the state level to federal level, local level, and now back to the state level at the University of Kentucky, this has been my career, is focusing on disability education and employment policy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that with you and sort of give us an opportunity from all the different places we come from to level set around some of that. Some of this will be very familiar to many of you. Some may be news to you. Maybe you'll hear some things that you hadn't heard before. You didn't know it was, quite to that extent in terms of prevalence of people with disabilities or something else. But I want to begin there and talk about disability prevalence, and people with disabilities make up a significant demographic and represent an underutilized talent pool across Kentucky and across the nation. In America, about 1 in 4 Americans identify as having some type of disability. Now, don't have to answer out loud or anything, but when you think about Kentucky, do you think that ratio goes up or down? Yeah, if you said up, you would be right. So about 1 in 4 Americans identify as having a disability. About 1 in 3 Kentuckians identify as having a disability. So actually that percentage is about 37%. So that's, more than 1.5 million of our citizens in the Commonwealth, more than 1.5 million of those folks who are our neighbors, our friends, our family. Disability prevalence is pretty significant here. But what about employment outcomes for people with disabilities? Well, we just heard that Kentucky has one of the highest disability rates in the nation, but at the same time, we have one of the lowest workforce participation rates among people with disabilities. So 39% of Kentuckians with disabilities are employed. And you can do the quick math there, right? That means 61%, again, of our family, our friends, our neighbors, 61% of people with disabilities in Kentucky are not employed. So when you compare the percent employed of people with disabilities to those without disabilities, it reveals almost a 40% gap. And you might guess that ranks us pretty low among our state partners and state friends and neighbors, and it does rank us pretty low. It ranks us 50th, 50, ranks us 50th in the nation, and that's not where we want to be ranked. But there's a lot going on in Kentucky, and that's kind of where I want to wind down, because we also were asked to talk about efforts that are underway, and Kentucky has done a lot to address this low engagement of people with disabilities, and I'm not suggesting it started in 2018. I'm just giving you a couple of examples, I think, as Robin suggested. But employment first, which is that notion that everyone can work, and everyone, given an opportunity to work and have given the supports they need, can be successful. And we know that businesses who employ people with disabilities often do better than their peers who do not, and people who support those individuals with disabilities. Anyway, so lots of other things we could talk about with employers maybe another day, but employment first was first in executive order in our state in 2018. There was an executive order by Governor Bevin establishing employment first as an expectation in Kentucky. And in 2020, Governor Beshear also issued an executive order on the same. And in 2022, that was another bellwether year for us in Kentucky, because that's when the Kentucky General Assembly passed a bill on employment first. And I was in those meetings, and some of you were too, certainly Representative Tipton in the House. But so thanks to the General Assembly, to Senator Danny Carroll for sponsoring that in the Senate initially. And there was no vote anywhere. This was in committee meetings in the Senate and on the floor of the Senate, committee meetings in the House, on the floor of the House. It was unanimous. And then the governor also signed this on March 24th, 2022. So truly a bipartisan, bicameral agreement we have in our state is how we set an expectation of more people with disabilities being engaged in the workforce. And so employment first is a policy of the Commonwealth. This is the reading from the law. it's a policy of the Commonwealth of Kentucky that competitive integrated employment shall be considered the first and primary option for people with disabilities of working age who desire to become employed. Competitive integrated employment means that that people with disabilities are they make above minimum wage and they earn at least the same or more than their non-disabled peers who are doing similar work. It means they have opportunities for promotion, opportunities for advancement, similar to those without disabilities who are doing similar work. And it means they're working with non-disabled peers. They're working with not just with people with disabilities, but they're working with people without disabilities. Again, to the same extent that people without disabilities doing similar work in that job would be doing. So clearly, we've set an expectation and commitment in our state around this as it relates to employment and a lot of partnership around that. I want to challenge you with a question, and we won't answer it now, but just sort of to yourself. And then I want to close out my part with a couple of efforts that we've been doing with the Chamber of Commerce. Again, great credit goes to the Chamber on so much of this as well. But let me ask you a question. When you think about disability, do you think of disability as an outcome or a demographic? An outcome or a demographic? So I'm going to suggest to you that a lot of times, maybe a lot of us think of it as an outcome, but I'm going to challenge you to give some consideration to thinking about disability as a demographic, just as we would anything else. When we're thinking about recruitment and hiring and developing and retaining talent, what kind of shifts might happen if we viewed disability as a demographic rather than an outcome? And if we truly believe that a thriving workforce in Kentucky depends on the full inclusion of all of our people, and that includes people with disabilities. But this is the Commonwealth education continuum. So what about education? What if we applied that same sort of question and answer to education? Again, I'm not suggesting everybody views disability as an outcome, but what if we view disability as a demographic and not an outcome? What kind of shifts would happen or potentially could happen in education? Would it increase the number of students with disabilities enrolled in CTE classes? Would it increase the number of students with disabilities enrolled in early post-secondary opportunities like dual credit? What about the number of students earning industry recognized certificate or other credentials, being a part of that 60 by 30, right? What about the number of students with disabilities engaged in work-based learning? So are those numbers we know now? I don't know, but we're going to do a lot of learning in our strategic plan over the next several years, and a lot of questions we're going to ask to folks like you. And a lot of times we're going to want to share what we learn with you and have you help refine what we learn over these next 4 years. But last thing I'll do real quickly, employment's a key priority for us at the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute, where I serve, and we are the state's University Center on Disability. And we've been pleased to work with so many partners over the last several years, and particularly the Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber Foundation, and even more specifically, so many on Lakeisha's great team over there. But we've done 2 inclusive workforce summits in Kentucky. We did one in 2023 and 2024. And the focus of those was on engaging the talent of Kentuckians with disabilities. There were several hundred at both events that were held in Lexington, and most of those were employers and then lots of other people coming together to think about how do we put some particular thought and consideration around this population of students or population of individuals that face so many barriers that the Lieutenant Governor talked about and so many gaps that Dr. Thompson talked about earlier. And then another thing we did with the Chamber is the Disability Hiring Academy. And I promise I'm almost finished. Disability Hiring Academy in January of this year. The Chamber was so wise to add the Disability Hiring Academy to its suite of hiring academies, the Military Hiring Academy, the Second Chance Hiring Academy that had been so successful. Well, they added the Disability Hiring Academy in January of this year. And when I looked at the impact report that the Chamber produced, and I know Lakeisha has seen this, and she could talk about it better than me, but I was just blown away. I mean, there were 46 organizations that participated and represented a broad range of industries. The pre and the post data from surveys showed this just a transformative learning experience. So a couple of those real quick. Prior to the Academy, 60% said rated a lower moderate level of confidence in recruiting, training, and retaining individuals with disabilities. 88% post-survey, 88% of participants indicated they had gained a stronger understanding of disability inclusion strategies, felt more confident about implementing them. Another post result, 60% of respondents reported taking steps to improve, taking concrete steps to improve their hiring practices to more explicitly include people with disabilities and making workplace accommodations. And so then the chamber looked again 3 months out. The majority had taken concrete steps to enhance that workplace accessibility and inclusion. And this is the last one, but this one blows me away more than any. Notably, the chamber found this, those that attended this academy, over 20, I think it was actually 21, I think it was 21 individuals with disabilities were hired. And it was reported it was directly because of this academy. That's what the employers reported back to the chamber. So as we think back on the priorities that I started with the Education Attainment Committee and that I have the privilege of leading at the KWIB, we're laser focused on ensuring that all Kentuckians can achieve across the educational spectrum. So earned credentials, work-based learning opportunities, early post-secondary opportunities, employment. That's what we're about. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to need help with. We're going to keep coming back to you over and over again, and because you're great partners with and for us. And so with that, Alice here, I'm sure there's a lot that I missed. Maybe there couldn't be too much that I missed as long as I talk.
I would say, Johnny, we appreciate your passion with it. And I think to the point that, Johnny really focused on individuals with disabilities, but the employers that came together to build this strategic plan, they said we need more veterans in our workforce. We need more immigrants and refugees. We need more people coming out of incarceration. And so with all that, we really want to be able to increase the talent pool because those are places we can really have gains and increasing that participation. I do want to note a couple things for that employer education collaboration. So with our prison system, Governor Beshear invested in jobs on day one with Luther Luckett Prison having some iron workers that are going in there and training, and they're getting credit for prior learning as soon as they come out into the iron worker apprenticeship program. The CTE certification process that incorporates employers reviewing and the local boards reviewing. So that is also a collaboration with business. And then our group, the KWIB, has launched an AI task force to understand how AI is impacting workers and employers. And we have across the spectrum, business, education, and everyone else trying to contribute and seeing how does AI impact workers in the workplace and what can be done to complement trainings and to embrace the technology where we can and use it appropriately in the lens of workforce development. So that's what we have, and hopefully you guys walked away with some information. We're open to questions, but back to you, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you both, Lakeisha and Johnny, for sharing, and of course, Alisher, for you always being willing to jump on a call with Robin and me and always help us with all of our questions. You did have a question, Johnny, from Amber Snell, and I forgot to introduce Amber. So Amber is our new EPSB representative. She is the current chair of EPSB, and her question, Johnny, is in the chat, but I want everybody to hear it. It says, I would be curious as to the breakdown of the type of disability for the 61% who are not employees. Are these physical, mental? Is that data there or available anywhere?
Yeah, from this particular data source, that data is probably not as clean as we would like it to be. But what we do know is that would be a cross disability sort of category, if you want to use that term. But in terms of specific breakdown and as far as numbers, I don't know the answer to that. But let me dig a little bit more, and if I can find something, I'll pass it along.
Thank you. Any other questions that come to mind for Lakeisha or Johnny or Alisher? I have one for them. Well, Johnny, as you and Lakeisha saw, and you're fairly fresh to the CEC since we had you come, You know, we are, like I said at the very beginning in our mission, we are have the unique opportunity for all these folks who are on this call. They have a sphere of influence, and we even have a few that aren't on today that have very much spheres of influence and change. Clearly, our co-leads are incredible leaders, well-respected leaders at all facets of our pipeline and in our state. And so my question is, when you hear this, and we talked to Alisher a little bit about this, but where do we fit? And you all referenced it. So this is for Lakeisha or Johnny. Where do we fit in these work groups for you? Because what we don't want to do is duplicate the work. We want to elevate it. We want to advocate for a stronger pipeline, and certainly support it. But we are an engaging group. And I will tell you, these folks, if they don't serve, they find people that are excellent to serve and dig in and capture the voices of Kentuckians, lived experiences, and really to help move things forward. And so I just kind of put that back on you guys as your leadership on the KWIB committees. You know, where do you see us fitting in, or are we a voice for you? How can we partner with you in an effective way that continues to let you meet your goals and expectations, but can help expand the reach of what you're trying to accomplish?
Lakeisha, you
Yeah,
want to go
no,
first?
I'm happy to, yes, jump in. So I think especially at the KWIB level, it's really going to be awareness. So I think we're still in that phase of cultivating what does that strategic plan actually look like? Like we've identified those areas. When
Okay.
it comes to education next steps or what's the role of the business community, I really see this group as being a place to maybe discuss and even validate to see, hey, are you hearing similar things? And then an additional place to say, how do we continuously streamline and coordinate on the next steps? So again, with it being still fresh and not necessarily published, it's hard to know what the exacts are, but that's kind of really high level where I see the benefit and really power of this group being is amplifying and validating and continuing to shape some of those things that we want to put together.
Yeah, this is Johnny Collette. I completely agree. While we are fresh, and I'm fresh certainly to this committee in terms of speaking with y'all, many of you are friends and longtime colleagues, and I've watched the work of the CEC from a distance, so I have a pretty good understanding of what y'all care about and what you're trying to do. And one of the things for me on the committee that I have the privilege of leading is I suspect you're going to get an invitation from me at some point to come and speak to this committee because we don't want to duplicate where unnecessarily, and we don't want to, sort of just continue to get better in isolation, right? We want to get better together and get better collectively. So that, and also, in terms of disability more broadly, I would love for you to consider us, me, all of us who do this work as enthusiastic partners. If this committee, if the CEC gets, even, I know you have been interested, but if you get even more interested on digging on some of that, we need to think more about that second and third question, right? What's the disaggregation look like? What are those needs if we want to make sure we don't leave any students behind? Consider us enthusiastic partners and people who are ready to drop whatever we can to serve you and partner well with you.
Amanda, I
Awesome.
wanted to jump in. I was trying to get my hands up earlier. I just don't move
Sorry.
fast enough. I don't know how to raise my hand either. But the couple points I wanted to make, and one, Johnny, I mean, first of all, we do see it as a demographic. As a matter of fact, our Committee on Educational Opportunities is getting ready to pick this up as one of our biggest monikers. I don't think we can do what we need to do unless we do see it as demographic. We know there's a variety of disabilities, right? So a part of what we've been able to deal with, get data, understand it, and so on. I think you can be a big assistance to us as we do that. That's number one. Number two, Lakeisha, we didn't talk about SWAT very much, but as one of the people who are, I named us SWAT heads, by the way, yesterday, just to let you know. But
I heard.
one of the things, with the Secretary of Economic Development, Secretary of Labor Workforce, with Ashley, President of the Chamber, Ryan Quarles, the Commissioner, we this is the first state that's ever put us together in thinking about what it means to build an economic development system from the front end and the back end. And Lakeisha, you've been our official gatherer of the herd, without a doubt. But I just want to say to this group, we've connected more dots, if you want to call it that, and talking about how each of us play a vital piece to keeping this state economically growing, right? And so I did want to just pick up off of Lakeisha's SWOT statement, and to do that, we were very much a part of resources of putting together the last convening. We're looking forward to the next, where we'll expand this even more. But just know that this has extended fairly deep into silos that was never supposed to meet based on bureaucratic terms, and that we burned down those silos and created what we call, really, I call it a cabal. Other people call it more positive words, but really a way to think about how we all have skin in this game. And Continuum is very much, I agree, Johnny, that mechanism by which we can bring some of the, if nothing else, information or knowledge to light about how we're doing that.
Yeah, and I think we also have an opportunity, whether it's through SWAT or just other programming, to also bring those best practices to light. So we'll inevitably learn the things that work when you're trying to build that coordinated system. But also some things are going to flop, right? So I think there's also great learning and understanding when you're able to learn from both sides of that coin. Because this really is going to be designed, like, how do you create a more streamlined, seamless workforce system for the employers? So we're going to have a lot of employer input there, and I think we'll be able to share that information with this group as well.
Very helpful. I'd love to hear from folks from different perspectives: student perspective, the education perspective, post-secondary and K-12, pre-K. What stands out to you in these conversations today, or a regional perspective, a data perspective, policy, that really stand out to you as maybe common themes or where you fit, how we look at education, how we look at our student demographics as our future employer demographics? I think that's a great point, Johnny, that you brought up. You know where I stand on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, just initial thoughts or questions that come to mind, or how does this even fit with what we're doing? Be really honest about it, because I think we have to look at the whole pipeline piece, to really figure out where we go and how we use our time and our influence effectively. So I'd love to hear from you.
Amanda,
Yes.
Diane Woods, and I sit on the Kentucky Board of Education. I find this conversation so engaging and so needed. And as I listen to it, I just keep wondering, why haven't we been doing this all along? We talk about students coming in pre-K and getting them ready for a career, but how can we get them ready if we are not engaged with those different careers? And as we look at the state of Kentucky and how advanced some of the advancements that are being made, I think we have a responsibility to be sure that we are part of the team, a part of the actions that make sure that we have that population that are going to be needed for the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking to a young man who dropped out of EKU and got in some trouble the next couple of weeks and has been incarcerated. And he's like, well, it's hopeless now. I can't go back to school. I can't this, I can't that. I said, you can do anything that you said. There are materials in place. And I was always so wondering why the futurity, like the big billboards that you see in different locations in the community, why don't we have some of them around? Or is that something that would have to be funded by somebody? Well, it would have to be funded by somebody.
Well, I would
How do we
love,
do that? Because
I would
when I
love
go
to
up
answer
Georgetown Road,
that, especially with Representative. I'd love to answer that, especially Representative Tipton. We were able to hook and crook in my shop and found money to build futurity. We had no money set aside for it, but we thought we wanted to build something state of the art. So we did get a little gear money. COVID money, I call it.
Yeah.
And then we found some inside of my shop to build it. I've got permanent people dedicated to it that really I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I will fund those. But you're right. We're going to be going to the legislature for a small amount of money, it won't be a lot, to keep this going. But we do need to advertise this. I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. I've gotten so many responses from people and a couple of parents as on my messenger as of couple of days ago telling me that their kids use it. I gave it to my own child who is actually getting ready to go to college next year, and they were just flabbergasted at how they could get information at this level. So I'm there with you. We've got to get this out there to where people can use it.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about different demographics, is that we get the word out there to different populations. There are organizations in all of our counties and communities that are either based upon different missions. For example, I'm thinking of the YMC Black Achievers, the NCAA education programs. And until we do that, I think we're going to keep going back, like that hamster on the wheel, just keep moving over and over and over. But even those billboards and that information being in different segments of the population, especially in here in Lexington, where we think about the zip code area. Okay, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so great question. And Dr. Thompson answered a lot of that. And that's where we're even seeking private funding as well, because we're getting easily into schools, into DJJ, we're getting into JAG programs, we're getting into alternative schools, virtual schools. Jessica is at SOAR to get with Eastern Kentucky adults seeking jobs. Where we're struggling, Diane, is exactly what you said. Those who are not connected to a center or a program with support, getting that information to them. We have our largest group of users are Louisville and Lexington, because that's where our greatest populations are. But our usage has really expanded. But we think most of that, honestly, is from schools, which we are very grateful for. Our career centers are actually using it. Very grateful. Kia is using it. Some of our campuses are using it. So that's fantastic. Our career development centers, we've included those on our campuses. But it's the individuals who almost that you talked about that says, I got nothing. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I think that's where we have to get, and that's what I had shared with the committee, that we have to get real strategic on our outreach for those who feel lost and unworthy. And that's where we have a definite need. And I appreciate you bringing that up very much. And Amber Snell had just put in the chat, teaching students that are capable and have opportunity are not just test score or a disability. And that is so true. Mindset is everything. And Representative Tipton, I think you had unmuted a while ago. Were you going to say something?
Yes, Amanda.
Yes.
A few comments to make as we go forward.
Yes.
Alisher mentioned that his group is doing the AI task force.
Yes.
And I think this is a critical subject that we have to get our arms around.
Yep.
It's here. It's not going away. And it's going to drastically impact the workforce and the skills that our students need to engage in the workforce. I was listening to the radio this morning and they were talking about a restaurant, I believe in San Francisco. You go in, you order your food, it's brought to you. There's not a single human being in that restaurant. It's all done by robots. But somebody's got to build those robots, somebody's got to maintain them, it's got to program them. So we're going to see a drastic paradigm change in the skills that are needed going forward, and we have to be able to respond to that. I know Southern Regional Education Board is in the second year of a task force on this. They've got higher ed people, business leaders, so I'm anxious to see some of their recommendations that come out. That's critical. I do have a request.
Yes.
At the last interim meeting, we had ETS there to discuss the praxis. And I'm confident in the 26th session there's going to be a discussion and a debate about the need for the praxis exam for our teacher workforce. And it actually, a bill passed out of the House last year. I had some issues with it, particularly because Senate Bill 9 and House Bill 162 require testing for early education, literacy, and numeracy teachers.
That's right.
But it did not go anywhere in the Senate, but the conversation is going to continue to go up. So I was wondering if CEC could give some thought to that and have some conversation about that, about
Absolutely.
the importance, the practicality, and maybe some suggestions how to best navigate that issue going forward. I would certainly appreciate that.
We can absolutely do that. And as you know, since the beginning, that has been one of the key priorities on this group. Because if we don't have strong, competent, prepared teachers, we're not going to have strong, competent, prepared students. And you know, it's important that we invest in our educators. And so we can absolutely follow up. It's interesting you brought that up because that has been brought to me twice already this week. And it is only Wednesday. So I appreciate that and would love for us to go back and pull what we have and update that and get an updated information. I absolutely will take that. Thank you.
Amanda,
Anything
can I
else? Oh yeah, Alisher.
do a quick response to Representative Tipton on the AI side? So our task force, we wanted to make it limited time, so just this year, and it is co-chaired by Professor and Dr. Sun from U of L and a business member for our board, Kim Menke. So we wanted to make it kind of a dual approach. And one of the things that we're already, after one meeting, finding out technology is moving so fast, but guess what's still sticking around? Those essential, durable, soft skills that's going to be consistent across the board. So I think that just reflects the importance of the graduate profile. So as we embrace whatever this is, AI that's going to change lives, we're still going to lean on those foundational skills that we need to navigate the machines and us as humanity. So thank you for that point. We're a lot to learn. And one thing to note, we spoke to National Governors Association, and we're not behind. Kentucky is, we're right there learning and understanding how this impacts the workplace. And so we are right there with some leading states in this effort.
Since we're already on this, anybody else have requests or things that based on what was shared today, what's going on with the KWEB, what's going on with the foundation, what's going on in post-secondary and K-12, preparing for a long session, what else really comes to mind for you on these topics in the pipeline piece?
Amanda, I was just thinking, I appreciate Representative Tipton bringing this up as we think about transitions.
Yep.
I know there's some transitioning going on between ACT, the SAT, and whatever in
Yeah.
K-12. We're having a lot of discussions in higher ed about what we do to move forward, to be honest with you, and we haven't come to any conclusions yet. But one of the things that happened years ago when I took over higher ed, we went to a test optional state. And we still use SATs and ACTs, mainly ACTs and Coyote and placement, and scholarships, to be honest with you. But there is some movement on our campuses, as Jenny Sawyer can tell you, who's there, to look at other alternative measures. Although not early in the year, but later in the year, we will have some of these things pretty well decided. And I think there may be a need for an update because that's really going to affect those that are coming out of anywhere they may come out of, Dr. Gregory, high school or equivalency or wherever the case may be, to look at how they're going to start transitioning into college with the most opportunity for that college to be affordable, at least, as well as testing where they go and how they're placed and so on. So I will bring that up as a conversation toward the end of, or at the beginning of next year.
No, I appreciate that. And that is a topic I believe that's still on hold on where that transition is, but it's still a pain point. I think people would appreciate discussing and thinking ahead. Anything else? This all relates. It all ties in together.
I will jump in, Amanda. Just having a middle school background and now at the high school level, I'm curious. Futurity is an amazing resource, and I'm sharing it with anybody and everybody I can. How does that tie into student ILPs, and or does it? And if it doesn't, it should. And then at what, I know the ILPs are utilized at the middle school level, but I'd be very curious as to how many middle school districts, schools utilize a career options type class to actually explore those career pathways before students have to select them going into the high school level. Because I know for our eighth graders formally, they would determine their pathway going in as an eighth grader and not really have any idea other than a tour of the ATC center that looked like a cool opportunity. And so you had some kids that were able to go into those CTE pathways, but then your college and career bound kids or your AP / dual credit kids, they're not really then continuing too much career exploration and going to the college level with not a lot of idea of what is truly out there for them. So I think we have some amazing resources, but how do we intentionally get them into the hands of the students that need them?
Yes, so excellent question. And some of the things that you mentioned, Amber, are specific to middle school is exactly what the middle school exploration grant, planning grant is doing, is really digging into the relevance and quality and exposure and how we can improve the experience and really not just check a box. The other piece with the IOP, when it was in first development, we had agreed with KDE not to collect individual information from underage students because we didn't want to have an account and then have that data in our hands. So what we're exploring with KDE actually are options for the IOP, because the number one request we get is how can I track when my students are on here to do their career exploration and the requirements of the IOP. One of those, I would say, well, let's look at the requirements of the IOP and make sure, nothing is set in stone that can't be changed or updated, because it's not about the checkbox, as you all know. I'm not telling anybody anything you don't know. It's really about the process and about the advising of future opportunities, middle school into what's available in high school, and high school what's available afterwards, right? And how you build that out. And so we are exploring that, Amber. We're also exploring a grant to support the living wage calculator. So it also supports the financial literacy and budgeting and planning in life with actual wages and locations in the state. So those are absolutely the things we are working towards and trying to secure funding for, but also really looking for a secure way to do that that does not jeopardize any student or give us any data we don't need. And so that's what we're working towards. But that is definitely when we meet with counselors, advisors, career coaches, that's what they say if they're in K-12. Like if we just had a way to capture this, then that would fulfill our ILP plan. But I don't want it to just fulfill a plan. I really want it to be a personalized experience. So I appreciate your question and we'll keep you guys updated. We have a couple avenues of funding that we're trying to pursue, and but we'll see. And as you know, we did request some money from the General Assembly just for that maintenance and development. It's really not even for staff, it's for keeping it going. And thank you for sharing it very much. Anything else? This has been super helpful. Macy, can I put you on the spot for just a second? You're not a shy girl. I know you. I would love to know, like, is this hitting home for you, or is this like, wah, wah, this is not how it really is in life? Like, I would love for you to share your perspective as a senior in college and as you prepare for a career.
Absolutely. And I think Amber's comment a few minutes ago really hit home. Teaching students that they are capable and have opportunities and not just a test score or disability is really important, especially when we're talking about in the early education formative years, starting in pre-K. Because I mean, in my educational experience in Kentucky public schools, as early as kindergarten, you're taking MAP tests, you're taking reading exams, you're taking all of these scores, and you're in an environment where everyone is taking those same scores, and it's immediately comparison at age 5, I think. And then so teaching people that it's more opportunities are still available for you, even if you are not, say, testing in the highest percentile of your class, or if you have different needs than other students in your class. And I think this conversation that's happening right now is a great way to not only start what Amber was talking about, but also start carrying that into the workforce. Because I mean, now as a senior, I've seen a lot of my friends transitioning from college to the workforce, and some people struggle. They do, because it's very different. And I would say a lot of these people were high achieving in college, but it's difficult. It's difficult to change, and it's difficult to find your place in the workforce, and also you translate those skills from your education to the workforce, and not just feel like it's a repetitive 8 to 5 cycle, which is kind of difficult coming from college. So I think this conversation that we're starting is definitely hitting home, and definitely something that we should keep working with. And I love the idea of the 10 essential skills that we were talking about earlier in this meeting. I think that's a great way to help people transition from post-secondary education to their professional world. I hope that kind of answers your questions and gives some
It
perspective.
absolutely does. And then some. I appreciate your perspective, especially from, you're right, from the perspective of being 5 or 6 and what that felt like, because you were completely aware, and which was not intended for malicious intent, but you already know kids don't miss a thing, you know. And so as you're a grown woman now and preparing, I appreciate your perspective on that for sure. So thank you. And thank you for letting me put you on the spot. So anything else before we kind of wrap up today to prepare for another? Yeah, Jenny.
So yesterday I had the pleasure of going to the ECTC community breakfast that they have every year that Justin Pate kicks off kind of the school year. And we signed our MOA to kick off our very first 4-year program that's happening on a community college campus at ECTC, and it's in applied engineering. And I tell you this because the young man who will be the first student in this program got up and spoke. And I think he identified a learner that we need to keep in mind. And that is, when he was a senior in high school in Hardin County, he had to help support his family. So he had to help his parents. And so he began his educational journey by taking his last credit of high school while working full-time in a manufacturing plant. And he took his last high school credit as a dual credit English at ECTC. And from there was introduced into some of their industrial maintenance programs and got his AAS, and has been promoted in the workforce, and is now moving on to this 4-year degree program in applied engineering. So I think, I think that realistically in this Commonwealth of Kentucky, we will see more and more students who, from an affordability standpoint, take that very non-traditional path. And so their transition to career is happening right alongside while they are earning their degree. And they're not the adults that we think of that are doing it. They're 8. He is now 20 years old and is in his second job in manufacturing, has been promoted, and is now starting his journey. He's taking 15 hours, 12 with us and 3 with ECTC. But I think we're going to see more and more of this, and we need to adapt our models to be able to fill those jobs that are definitely needed in applied engineering. And also, but to fill the needs of those students that are out there who need those more flexible models.
I love that, Jenny. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a great perspective.
Jenny, as you all know, we just started off our second cohort in our student success collaborative to focus on items exactly what you just meant. We're working with University of Louisville as a part of the new cohort, along with 2 community colleges. You're absolutely right. We better be changing our model, not just of delivery of classes, but also of delivery of services. And so our big push now, as well as Representative Tipton knows, we have adult learners as part of our performance funding model. Our institutions are looking for innovative ways, as you all are doing with ECTC, by the way. Who would have ever thought that to do exactly what you're talking about?
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. I think our whole perspective has to shift. Definitely. Any last words from our co-leads, Lieutenant Governor Coleman or Dr. Thompson before we?
I'll just say you guys are amazing. I love listening to your experiences and your feedback and your perspective. They're in some cases are things that I would have never thought of, like Jenny, what you just said is not something I'd ever really given any thought to. And so I love that you guys keep each other, all of us on our toes. So thank you guys for what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, I will just say that I think about when we started this and where we're at now, and I say this almost every meeting because every meeting I feel this way. And I'm just quite amazed at how far we've started. I wish if we could compile all the data from how we've improved in all these areas in the last 5 years, you're going to be shocked. I mean, you'll literally be shocked. Now, interesting enough, other states are following us and they probably know our data are falling and at the level, because this is why, obviously this is why we do what we do, no doubt, but this is why you all who are decision makers, that not just people that can come in and talk, but decision makers at so many levels are a part of this CEC. I'm really proud of this, and every time I'm on here, it's always hard for me to find 2 hours in any block of time anymore, as Amanda can tell you. But every time I'm on here and spend the 2 hours here, I just walk away, Lieutenant Governor, as you said, even though I know this already, but I walk away here and get feeling just very proud of the work that we're doing in Kentucky. And I hope you all feel equally proud.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful for the participation and the collaboration. I think it's just gotten stronger. And literally everybody asked me, how do you get those people to the table? Every time. And I said, our secret sauce in Kentucky is collaboration. And I believe that. And so this really sets us up beautifully for November. It is a face-to-face. I know that's hard for many of you, and we've held off a large block of time. We'll confirm that location. It'll be here in Frankfurt, and confirm that block of time. We don't want to waste your time to drive for, a short meeting, but we also value your time, and we know how incredibly precious it is. But we will compile these notes. You've really set us up well for how we can deep dive into some things definitely in November, what we move forward with, and I think even some data points. To your point, we did not bring data today because there's not a lot of data around work-based learning and partnerships. What Alisher talked about with the apprenticeship pieces are probably the strongest, but there's a lot of missing pieces that we don't know about. And even Johnny, when the questions Amber asked you, I think there's some missing data that we could share around that, so to dig in. So I'm just really encouraged. I will follow up with an email if our notes. Also, Alisher had a one-pager, and I will send to you also the PowerPoint from today and some upcoming events and a futurity ad. So lots of things going on around our state, and I just am so grateful for everything that you do. So other than that, we will see you hopefully November 19th, 10 to 3 right now, tentative, but it probably will not be that long. And we will finalize our time and get that invitation to you as soon as possible. But otherwise, have a great afternoon, and thank you for your leadership.